Hello there, this is All 24 News World News Program, and these are the headlines. A powerful earthquake hit Indonesia's main island on Monday and killed at least 162 people and left hundreds injured. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg asked NATO members to step up military support to Ukraine to ensure the best outcome for the country, a sovereign, independent, democratic nation in Europe. Also coming up, Iran has pledged to take firm response against the IAEA over a resolution criticizing Tehran's lack of cooperation with the nuclear watchdog. And a Palestinian was killed, 2 others were wounded, and another one arrested by Zionist forces on Monday during a raid on Jenin area in the West Bank. Hello again, I'm Karim Zachary. Welcome to the program. First, in our news, a powerful earthquake hit Indonesia's main island on Monday and killed at least 162 people and left hundreds injured. Residents of Java Island were terrified and were pushed to flee their homes into the streets. According to West Java Governor Ridwan Kamil, more than 13,000 people whose homes were heavily damaged were taken to evacuation centers.
There were 162 people killed, 326 people injured. Most suffered a broken bone or were injured because of falling objects. And there were also around 13,784 evacuees.
To the latest development in Palestine now, series of raids, killings, arrests and violation of Palestinian rights continue in the West Bank. A Palestinian was killed, 2 others were wounded, and another one arrested by Zionist forces on Monday during a raid on Jenin area in the West Bank. According to the UN, the Zionists carried out more than 2,000 raids in the West Bank. These raids have caused more than 125 Palestinian deaths, the heaviest toll in years. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh called on the world to reject settlement, murder, and destruction by the Zionist entity, who must pay the price for their hostile policies against Palestinian people.
They opened fire on us without even asking us to surrender. They didn't even announce themselves as the Israeli army. None of that. We were asleep and woke up terrified, not knowing what was going on. When we got up, my brother knew it was the Israeli army, and they asked us to put ourselves down and to put our heads down. While I was getting up, an explosion broke a window.
To Lebanon now, the country's parliament speaker Nabih Berri called on deputies of the House to hold the 7th session to elect a president for the country next Thursday. The request came after 6 parliamentary sessions had failed to elect a new president to succeed Michel Aoun, whose presidential term ended on October 31st. To Gulf countries now, Qatar Energy has signed a 27-year deal to supply China's Sinopec with liquefied natural gas, the longest such LNG agreement so far, as a volatile markets drive buyers to seek long-term deals. Following Russia's war in Ukraine, competition for LNG has become intense, with Europe in particular needing vast amounts to help replace Russian pipeline gas that used to make up almost 40% of the continent's imports.
Today really is a milestone, is an important milestone. It's the first SPA that we'll be signing out of the Northfield East project. It's 4 million tons for 27 years to Sinopec of China. This marks the largest ever single SPA signed in the history of the LNG industry. And I think it solidifies that the long-term deals are here, and long-term deals are important for both seller and buyer to make sure that the sustainability of supply is there for countries that need LNG for the long term.
Still with economy news, but this time in Algeria, the Algerian Minister of Energy and Mines, Mr. Mohamed Arqab, and the Czech Minister of Industry and Trade, Josef Sikila, agreed to study the possibilities of cooperation between the two countries in the field of hydrocarbons, especially the gas industry, through the production, transportation, and storage of liquefied natural gas, in addition to developing the mining sector and geological studies.
ندرس إمكانية إمداد جمهورية التشيك بالغاز الطبيعي.
We're studying the possibility of supplying the Czech Republic with natural gas, and there are negotiations between the company of Sonatrach and the specialized Czech company to sign a contract to supply Czech Republic with natural gas and liquefied gas. Also in the negotiations, there was a long discussion with Mr. the Minister about the possibility of developing the Algerian mining sector. As you know, during the 70s, we had strong relations with Czech companies, which developed the mining sector in Algeria.
Algeria has strong historic relations with Czech Republic, and we want to continue in this deep history and this cooperation between the two countries. Czech Republic is one of the most industrial countries in the European Union, and with cooperation and collaboration with the third biggest economy in Africa, which is Algeria, I think that this partnership will be indefeatable.
And in Algeria still, the International Monetary Fund praised the improvement in short-term prospects in Algeria when it regards the economy. Of course, the progress in structural reforms that would facilitate the transition to more diversified and stable economic model. Zahra Farjani with the details.
The International Monetary Fund confirmed that energy prices have significantly improved Algeria's situation after the COVID-19 crisis in the short term, but there is a need to rebalance to put public finances on the right track. IMF Mission Chief for Algeria said that the rise in fuel prices helps boost the recovery of the Algerian economy after the shock of the COVID pandemic.
The prospects of the Algerian economy look good in the short term, and the current account is expected to achieve a slight surplus in 2023. The exceptional hydrocarbon revenues have reduced pressures on the current account of the balance of payments. The current account balance in 2022 is expected to record its first surplus since 2013. International reserves rose to $53.5 billion last September.
On the other hand, the international finance cooperation recommended the need to strengthen mechanisms to confront shocks in the future and to take additional measures to curb inflation.
The mission welcomes the progress made in financial reforms and recommends further integration on the government's spending plans and financing strategy in the budget preparation process. The mission agrees with the authorities that continued efforts to reform the business atmosphere may help transition to a more inclusive and diversified growth model and stimulate job creation. The new investment law and accompanying decrees would provide a more favorable environment for private investment.
The 2 weeks of IMF mission consultations drew positive prospects of Algerian economy, an orientation that needs further steps in the direction of enhancing recovery in the post-COVID phase and supporting the elements of facing external shocks.
To neighboring Tunisia now. Tunisia risks defaulting in its debt with slower economic growth and greater financial burdens over the upcoming 12 months. According to American Bloomberg report, the nation would be one of the 11 countries at risk of not being able to pay debts, joining Sri Lanka, Lebanon, and Zambia as nations that have historically failed to meet their obligations. Moroccan National Labour Union organized a protest stand on Sunday. The protest took place in front of the Parliament building in Rabat in conjunction with the expansion of demonstrations condemning the deterioration of purchasing power and the rise in prices. At the same time, the National University of Education in Morocco condemned the repression, abuse, and arrests. To other topical news now. The former Comorian President Ahmed Abdallah Sambi, detained for 4 years of a corruption case, appeared on Monday before the State Security Court in Moroni for high treason. The court is trying Sambi who is visibly ill in the so-called economic citizenship scandal involving the sale of Comorian passports to stateless persons from the Gulf states.
In the order of dismissal, it is stated that the crime of high treason does not exist, and well, we are going to reconstruct it. We're going to try to redefine it. That is to say that you have the judicial power, a magistrate, who is going to determine what crime of high treason is, and who is going to promote himself as a legislator.
A senior U.S. official called on the United Nations for holding North Korea accountable for its last launches of missiles that are able to reach the U.S. mainland. Let's follow this report by Usama Ayati.
The United States called for a United Nations Security Council presidential statement to hold North Korea accountable over its missile tests after Pyongyang launched an intercontinental ballistic missile last week, capable of reaching the U.S. mainland, clarifying the vitality for the 15-member Security Council to respond with one voice, and reiterated U.S. charges that China and Russia were encouraging Pyongyang by blocking Council action.
We will offer another opportunity for the Council to hold the DPRK accountable for its dangerous rhetoric and its destabilizing actions. The United States will be proposing a presidential statement to this end.
As a response, China's UN Ambassador Jiang Jun stated that China was concerned by the situation on the North Korean peninsula, which he said was in an upward spiral of rising tension and intensifying confrontation. Jiang urged the Security Council to play a constructive role on this issue and not always condemn or exert pressure on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
The US should take the initiative, show sincerity, put forward the realistic and feasible proposals, respond positively to the legitimate concerns of the DPRK, and turn to dialogue from the formality into a reality as soon as possible.
Russia's deputy UN ambassador Anna Evstigneva blamed the North Korean missile tests on military drills by the United States and its allies South Korea and Japan, including the use of strategic bombers, and called for the US to cease for its hostile activities.
We deeply regret that our Western colleagues have consistently ignored Pyongyang's repeated calls for the US to cease its hostile activities, which would open up opportunities for dialogue.
North Korea's foreign minister accused UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres of siding with the United States and failing to maintain impartiality and objectivity, saying it was Pyongyang's right to develop weapons for self-defense.
There should be no excuses for the DPRK's recent unlawful provocations. The ROK-US combined military exercises, which have long been conducted on a regular basis and are defensive in nature, can never be an excuse for the DPRK's illicit nuclear and missile development.
Foreign ministers of the group of 7 major industrialized nations stated that the Security Council needs to take significant measures in response to the latest intercontinental ballistic missile launch by North Korea. Earlier on Monday, South Korea urged the active cooperation of China and Russia to prevent North Korea from conducting further missile tests.
Hours after the launch of the Turkish military operation, on northern Syria and Iraq targeting Kurdish militants in the region, Turkey announced the death of 3 people in addition to the destruction of a school. The operation was considered a cross-border retaliation act by the Kurdish militants on Turkey that is aiming at widening its operation by implicating ground forces in the northern region of Syria and Iraq. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani announced on Sunday that Iran has pledged to take firm response against the IAEA over a resolution criticizing Tehran's lack of cooperation with the nuclear watchdog. According to the head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, Mohammad Islami, Tehran considers that the policy of maximum pressure on its country will not contribute to the resolution of the existing issues, and that Iran is moving forward with its nuclear plans and program in accordance with the law passed by the Iranian parliament.
In response to the recent action of 3 European countries and the United States in the adoption of a resolution against Iran, some initial measures have been decided by the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran. The implementation of these measures was realized today. in the presence of the IAEA inspectors in the Natanz and Fordo enrichment complexes. The IAEA delegation's trip to Tehran was approved in the framework of the deal with the agency. Iran's next steps will be taken in accordance with the new conditions. The Islamic Republic of Iran is always prepared to respond in the appropriate manner to the actions of Western parties when they return to their commitments.
In a further move by European countries after the last support by Britain to the Ukrainian government in its war against the Russian Federation, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg asked NATO members to step up military support to Ukraine to ensure the best outcome for the country as a sovereign, independent, democratic nation in Europe. Stoltenberg stated that any negotiations that can be taken to end the war in Ukraine should take into account the strength of Ukraine in the battlefield. He said the alliance must invest more money in Ukraine's defense.
So if we want an outcome which is acceptable for Ukraine, an outcome that ensures that Ukraine can prevail as a sovereign, independent, democratic nation in Europe, the best way of achieving that is to provide military support to Ukraine. So if we want an acceptable, peaceful, political solution, we need to provide military support to Ukraine.
And according to the Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces have started fortifying their positions in the occupied Luhansk, Donetsk and eastern Zaporizhzhia regions. The UK Defense Ministry further asserted that Moscow's positions are being manned by poorly trained reservists who have been mobilized. Meanwhile, according to a military official from Ukraine, since the start of Kiev's eastern counter-offensive, Ukrainians had liberated 12 settlements in the Luhansk region. And the European Union's top diplomat held 8 hours of fruitless talks on Monday with the leaders of Serbia and Kosovo and blamed them for their failure to settle a dispute over vehicle license plates. The EU's High Representative Josep Borrell invited Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić and Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti to Brussels for emergency talks. Borrell said after the meeting that both leaders had the responsibility to urgently de-escalate and indicated that both parties had shown constructive behavior.
The two parties did not agree to a solution today. I think that there is an important responsibility for the failure of the talks today and for any escalation and violence that might occur on the ground on the following days. And for the sake of transparency, I have to say that we put forward a proposal that could have avoided this risky situation that President Vučić accepted today, but unhappily Prime Minister Kurti did not.
Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev secured a second term in Sunday's snap election with 81.31% of the vote, the Central Asian Nations Electoral Commission said on Monday. The details with Islam said.
Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has been re-elected for a second term as president of Kazakhstan in snap elections with 81.3% of the vote.
We can say that the people have expressed convincing confidence in me as a president and all of you. The campaign would go down in history.
The former diplomat has not faced any actual challengers in the country, as his rivals were essentially unknown, and none of them exceeded 3.42%. Voter turnout was 69.4%, and voters' second most popular choice was against everyone, with 5.8% of ballots.
The presidential election in Kazakhstan took place in a political environment lacking competitiveness. And while it was efficiently prepared, the election underlined the need for further reforms to bring related legislation and its implementation in line with OSCE commitments to ensure genuine pluralism.
It was widely believed that Tokayev would be given another mandate to rule the largest country in Central Asia. Several Central Asian leaders congratulated Tokayev on Monday before the preliminary results. His position as an independent leader was strengthened by the vote on Sunday.
The election results are clearly visible, and I see nothing negative here. That should have been the case in order to run the state. You have to have international experience. Other candidates, in my personal opinion, there have no such experience.
I think these are real results, because who else to vote for besides Tokayev? We don't know anyone else.
With the support of his predecessor, Nursultan Nazarbayev, Tokayev won his first election in 2019, and he succeeded to overcome the violent anti-government protests, which were the worst in the country's history.
French President Emmanuel Macron announced on Monday a new exceptional envelope of more than 100 million euros during the support conference for Moldova held in Paris. Macron clarified that the aid had to be in an urgent form during the conference held in Paris. President of the French Republic also specified that he had exchanged with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky concerning the persistent threats to the Zaporizhzhia power plant.
We are also working to facilitate renewable energy projects and increase investments in energy efficiency. We managed to stay on track in difficult circumstances, but the road ahead remains very dangerous for Ukraine, for Europe, and for us in Moldova.
We're committed at your side to provide 126 million euros in aid in the form of emergency aid and medium-term financial support. At the start of the conflict and during the Berlin conference in Bucharest, we added 11 million euros in aid to non-governmental organizations and microloans to small and medium-sized enterprises, and we have delivered on these commitments with significant disbursements, in particular to the benefit of the government.
To different news now, a mayor of Medellin in Colombia, Daniel Cuentro, confirmed the discovery of 8 bodies aboard a small plane that crashed in a residential area of the city.
This plane, at the time of takeoff, had an engine failure. Unfortunately, the pilot was unable to keep the plane in flight, and it crashed in the residential sector of Belén Rosales. As I said, there were 8 people died. 8 bodies have already been identified on the spot.
Still in Latin America, Peruvian President Pedro Castillo received on Monday members of a high-level group from the Organization of American States, precisely the high-level group of the OAS Permanent Council to analyze the situation in Peru, is holding working meetings in Lima on November 21st and 22nd with various institutions and actors of national scene in order to gather comprehensive information on the political situation in the country. And for more international news, let's follow this roundup by Sofiane Kentoury.
The polling station closed in Equatorial Guinea on Sunday to begin the counting of the votes. President Teodoro Obiang, Africa's longest-serving ruler, is poised to extend his reign, according to some members of the voting center. The day was calm and without incidents, with a high participation of people in the elections. Continuous rain in western Albania has flooded hundreds of hectares of land, temporarily cut power supplies to some areas and forced families to evacuate. NASA's Orion capsule reached the moon Monday, whipping around the far side and buzzing the lunar surface, on its way to a record-breaking orbit with test dummies sitting in 4 astronauts. In several districts in Beijing, including its lodges, schools and restaurants, were shut on Monday with some residential compounds under lockdown after officials called for residents to stay home as COVID cases rise. China's capital reported 262 new infections, up from 621 a day earlier. Its sprawling Shaoyang district, home to 3.5 million people.
Moving on now to other news, Sanna Gutbeer and Benjamin Ladra, 2 Swedish human rights defenders from the project Solidarity Rising, are biking 48,000 kilometers through 40 countries to raise awareness about the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara, Africa's last colony. They started in Sweden in May 2022 and will arrive in Western Sahara sometime late 2024 or early 2025. All 24 News talked to the 2 activists earlier, and this is what they said.
We are doing a solidarity project for Western Sahara.
We're biking 48,000 kilometers, which is more than the length of the equator, through 40 countries during 2 years to raise awareness about the occupation of Western Sahara.
The idea is to bring the world's attention to Africa's last colony. We're speaking to people we meet on the streets, we're lecturing at universities, we're meeting with human rights organizations, and trying to tell the world about a forgotten conflict.
Western Sahara has been occupied for almost 50 years by Morocco, and there are grave human rights atrocities happening right now as we speak. And we feel that the world isn't doing enough, and that's why we're doing this project.
We will bike through Algeria as well, and we will pass through Algiers, Wahran, and all the way down to Tindouf.
There are the refugee camps where almost 200,000 Sahrawi people have been living for almost 50 years since they were invaded by Morocco. And we are hoping to do a big solidarity gathering when we are in Algeria, so we hope to see you there.
And finally, to some World Cup highlights now. England struck Iran 6-2 on Monday, which made it close to take the lead in Group B in World Cup thanks to 2 goals from Bukayo Saka and strikes by Jude Bellingham and Raheem Sterling, before substitutes Marcus Rashford and Jack Grealish rounded off the route. Mehdi Taremi narrowed the gap after 2 goals for Iran. As for the second fixture, the Netherlands snatched 2-0 victory over Senegal in their Group A clash at the Toumama Stadium on Monday. Cody Gakpo scored a late goal on his World Cup debut, and Davy Klaassen added a second. The third game for the day between the US and Wales ended with a goal in each half by Timothy Weah of the USA in the first, and spot kick by Wales' Gareth Bale in the second in the 82nd minute to tie the game for Wales. So this ended the game all square with a point each for the teams in Group B. And with this highlights, ladies and gentlemen, our news bulletin comes to a close. For more news stories, do visit our social media platforms as well as our official website. That's it for me, and bye for now.